The wind whipped through the narrow alley between the grocery store and the hardware shop as the late evening sun dipped behind the buildings, leaving only streaks of gold across the pavement. It was supposed to be a quick stop, just milk, bread, and something his 8-year-old son Jacob liked for the next day's lunch. But as Ethan Miles stepped out of the store, the bags weighing down his tired arms, he heard a voice, sharp, urgent, distressed. It cut through the air like a crack, stopping him mid-stride. A woman stood cornered near the loading docks, her hands clenched around her purse, her back pressed against the wall. 2 men loomed in front of her, blocking her path, their stance aggressive and territorial. She wasn't yelling, but her fear was unmistakable, trembling through every breath. And in that exact moment, something inside Ethan surged, an instinct born from years of protecting his son, from surviving the worst loneliness after his wife's passing, from knowing too well what it felt like to need someone, anyone, to show up. Before he even realized what he was doing, his feet began moving, carrying him straight toward the danger. Call to action number 1, placed after the hook. If you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like these matter, and your support helps us spread them. Ethan wasn't the kind of man who looked for trouble. If anything, life had taught him to keep his head down, to avoid conflicts, to keep his energy focused on raising Jacob. But something about the woman, her shaking hands, her eyes silently begging for help, ignited every protective instinct he had. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, didn't know why she was alone behind the store at dusk. All he knew was that she shouldn't be. Nobody deserved to stand alone like that. He had been alone once, heartbroken after losing his wife to an unexpected illness, overwhelmed by new responsibilities, drowning in the fear of raising a child by himself. And during those dark months, he often wished someone would step in for him too. Maybe that was why he stepped in for others now. Maybe that was why his feet didn't slow, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. The men turned toward him as he approached, their expressions hardening, their bodies stiffening with irritation. Ethan could feel fear crawling up his spine, but he swallowed it down. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a father trying to live a decent life. Yet somehow he looked at the woman, long brown hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes glossy with panic, and found the strength he needed. The world seemed to hold its breath in that moment. He stood between her and the men, making himself a human shield. The tension thickened in the air, but something shifted when the men realized he wasn't backing down. They exchanged glances, scoffed, and eventually backed away, their muttered threats fading as they disappeared around the corner. When the danger passed, the woman's knees buckled slightly. She clutched her purse tighter, her breath shaky but returning. Ethan helped her step away from the wall, guiding her closer to the light of the parking lot. She introduced herself as Grace Bennett, a local art teacher who had stayed late preparing materials for her students. Her car had broken down earlier that week, forcing her to walk home through the back lot. She tried to appear composed, but her trembling hands told the truth. Ethan recognized that look. He had worn it himself, when the world felt too heavy and forgiveness, safety, and gentleness seemed like distant dreams. For the first time since he lost his wife, he felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar but warm, a growing protectiveness, a desire to help beyond just this moment. As the days passed, Ethan found himself thinking about Grace more often than he expected. He saw her again 2 days later when she visited the grocery store and thanked him properly. She brought a small handmade card, decorated with watercolor flowers, so soft, so thoughtfully painted, that he could almost feel her heart in each brushstroke. She made one for Jacob, too, a bright little card with cartoon planets, because she remembered him mentioning he loved space. That gesture alone melted something inside him. Life had been a cycle of work, parenting, and quiet grief for so long. He had almost forgotten what unexpected kindness felt like. Soon, Grace became a gentle presence in their lives. She joined Ethan and Jacob for small outings, ice cream stops, walks to the park, simple moments that gradually wove new threads of connection. She was patient with Jacob, listening intently, encouraging him when he talked about stars, rockets, and his dream of becoming an astronaut. The boy adored her instantly, and Ethan found himself softening too, realizing how long it had been since someone truly saw him, not just as a single dad, not just as a man carrying loss, but as a human being deserving of companionship, compassion, and perhaps even healing. But healing never came without resistance. Ethan struggled with guilt. Guilt for moving forward, guilt for enjoying someone's company, guilt for laughing again late at night. He would sit in the quiet of his house, staring at old photographs of his wife. He feared replacing her, feared losing his sense of loyalty, feared confusing Jacob. Yet the more he got to know Grace, the more he realized she wasn't replacing anything. She was simply bringing something new. Lightness where heaviness had settled, warmth where loneliness had taken root, hope where wounds still lingered. Grace, on her end, had battles of her own. She had once been engaged but walked away from the relationship after discovering her partner's controlling behavior. Being cornered that night behind the store had awakened old fears she thought she had buried. But Ethan's intervention, his quiet bravery, his steady presence, reminded her of something she hadn't felt in years. Safety, and with safety came trust, something she carefully allowed to grow. Months passed, and the three of them built a quiet, natural rhythm together. They shared meals, stories, laughter, and even moments of vulnerability that stitched them closer. And then, one crisp autumn evening, something happened that changed everything. Ethan was closing up his small workshop, a home renovation business he ran from his garage, when he heard Jacob laughing outside. Grace was teaching him how to paint tiny pumpkins for a school project. Watching them from a distance, Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. It wasn't replacing the past. It was building a future. That night, as he walked Grace to her car, the world felt strangely calm. The streetlights cast a soft glow over the driveway. The air carried the subtle scent of falling leaves. Grace hesitated before getting in, as if searching for the right words. She admitted she had been afraid that night behind the store, not just of the men, but of being alone again. And she confessed that Ethan stepping in, without hesitation, had changed her life in ways she struggled to express. Ethan felt emotion swell in his chest. Raw, honest, overwhelming. He realized then that sometimes the people who needed saving weren't the ones in the alley. Sometimes they were the ones walking toward danger, carrying grief, carrying fears, carrying the weight of keeping a family together. Call to action number 2, before the ending. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring real, emotional, meaningful stories to more people. Grace became a part of their lives in ways none of them expected. She wasn't trying to replace anyone. She was simply offering love in the spaces where pain once lived. And Ethan, after years of holding everything together alone, finally learned that accepting help, accepting comfort, accepting companionship wasn't a betrayal. It was healing. Jacob, too, found in Grace a guiding light, someone who nurtured his creativity and curiosity with patience and joy. As time passed, their connection deepened. But it all began because one man chose to step in before anyone else did. Because kindness isn't just about saving someone from danger. Sometimes it's about saving each other from loneliness, from fear, from giving up on hope. Ethan discovered that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's protecting someone else. Sometimes it's allowing yourself to be loved again. Please comment below. What part of this story moved you the most? And that night behind the grocery store became a turning point, a moment of courage that blossomed into healing, a single act of kindness that changed 3 lives forever.